Namaste and greetings. I, Preksha Dalal, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niyati Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for the day 3 of the EPAYF Environment Policy and Action Youth Fellowship. We welcome you all to this immersive journey into impactful environmental policy in action. The chair for this program is Ms. Bhargavi S. Raoji, independent researcher and educator, environment activist, Bangalore, and visiting senior fellow honorary at IMPRI. Our expert panel for the program today includes Professor Krishna Rajji, Dr. Parashram Patilji, and Ms. Meena Vaidyanathan. The conveners for this course are Dr. Mansi Bal Bhargavji, Ms. Suhasini Ayarji, Professor Utpal Kumar Deji, Dr. Simi Mehtaji, and Dr. Arjun Kumarji. Proceeding further, we welcome everyone to this transformative journey and appreciate your dedication in investing your time, energy, and commitment to gaining a profound understanding of the crucial role and intricate details of environmental policy and action. We have also shared course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to state the housekeeping announcements. Please join the meeting on time. There will be Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posed as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and please refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. For our first session, I am delighted to invite Professor Krishna Rajji, Professor at Center for Economic Studies and Policy, Institute for Social and Economic Change, ISEC, Bangalore, and visiting professor at IMPRI for his address on environmental governance, economy, and development. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Preksha, for your kind introduction. Let me thank IMPRI and also Bhargavi for giving me this opportunity. Let me set time so that I'll not go behind 25 minutes. Yeah. In my lecture, I would like to highlight some of the contemporary paradoxes the state or the countries of the world and also the governance system in which they are dealing with the economy as well as environment. So my lecture resolves around the governance issue with respect to economy and environment. Let me share my PPT so that we can quickly. Is it provision is made for sharing the PPT?
Yes, sir. You can see share screen, yes.
Share screen, okay. Where is this option? I think.
Is the PPT file open, sir?
It is opened already.
Okay, so you go to share screen, then you will see, can you see the subscreen? PPT file, can you see? A window will pop up, then.
Okay. Share screen, yes. Yeah, now visible?
Yes. Sir. So you can go full screen. Yeah, yes, perfect.
So some pop-up is there. What is this part? Is enabled, closed app. Select close this. Yeah. Okay. So I have titled my lecture as Environmental Governance, Economy and Development. Basically, environmental governance is the way the government and societies deal with environmental problems. This lecture highlights. One minute, I'll take this. some pop-up is there. So this lecture revolves around macro view discourse about the economy and environment in the world, and particularly in India, and the way they interact and resulted in the present state of the environment. In other words, this lecture focuses on a detailed review about the current state of environmental governance in the world and in India. Yes, you know, environmental governance is synonymous with interventions aiming at changes in environment related incentives, knowledge, institutions, decision making, and behavior of the industry, and also behavior of the consumers or producers. Specifically, environmental governance refers to the set of regulatory processes, mechanisms, and organizations through which political actors influence environmental actions and outcomes. If you look at the relationship between economy and environment, or economy versus environment, there is always an argument that it is the common belief also that economics or economy per se is the root of the environmental problems. In this regard, there is a need to understand the impact of the economy on environment and the significance of the environment to economy. So what are the appropriate way of regulating economic activity so that balance is achieved among environmental, economic, and other social goals? So this is the governance in which we need to deal with various set of goals. It may be environmental goal, economic goal, and social goals. All need to be addressed by the governance system. So sometimes you know that all are very important. Environment is also important. Economic development is also important. Achieving social goals are also important. But without economy, most of the environmental issues are confined to research questions for scientists with no policy significance. Therefore, the essence of environmental problems is the economy, but economics has appropriate solutions to many environmental problems. What I would like to point out here is that we are living in an environment where economy is also important. At the same time, more important is environment. So using both economy and environment, we achieve certain societal goals, including meeting basic needs such as access to food, access to education, access to employment opportunities, housing, water, sanitation, health, etc. So in this way, we have to balance the environmental issues by the governance system. So that reflects the state of environment in India. So currently, what type of environmental policy we have, what are the issues or problems they created right now? There are, you know that government of India and also the world has adopted the policies of capitalism way back in 1980s onwards. After that, there are twin problems have prominently emerged. One is that income or economic inequality or wealth inequality. Another most important issue is that environmental degradation. Even we are talking about climate change. So in Delhi, we have witnessed more than 50 degrees Celsius. Delhi is really boiling, and people are unable to survive, especially the poor and children and aged and also the sick, etc. So what led to this type of issues? So capitalism or free market economy is accepted as economic system for economic development. In the market economy, majority of the capital goods are owned by private individuals or businesses. So the production and the services is based on the forces of supply and demand in the market economy. So government has no or little control over the market economy. So this is the governance system. So government here, it does not have much control on the market economy. That lead to these type of twin problems, that is income inequality and environmental degradation. So there is a, in this regard, that there is a debate which is going on in recent years, especially on achieving climate targets or climate goals, along with reducing the income inequality, etc. If you look at the recent report by the UN IPCC 6, this clearly exhibited through various scientific study and analysis. The world is going to witness an increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2040, beyond that to 2 degrees Celsius by the end of 21st century. So this is a very, very alarming situation the world is going to face in terms of increase in the average temperature level, and there is a governance failure or collective failure of the world communities or world countries to act very quickly on this issue. As a result, the what we call it as the global economic failure or environmental failure, even global commons failure will certainly be emerging in the coming days. So what went wrong in our economic policy? Why we have come to this situation, this state of environment, that is already 1 degree Celsius of temperature has been increased from 1940s, 50s onwards, and we are going to witness the increasing temperature level by 2040 to 1.5 degrees Celsius, beyond that 2 degree Celsius. What went wrong? So you know that we have adopted the policies of neoliberalism or capitalism policy, where the environment has been treated as not much important for the in the process of economic development, including the water, including the natural resources, including the air or the air quality, and oceans and forests, biodiversity, etc., etc. So the current GDP estimation also, if you look at the national account system, they estimate using only the man-made capital contribution of man-made capital and also the human capital, and they these policies grossly neglect the contributions made by the natural capital, including water, air, and other things. So this has resulted in over exploitation of natural resources because they don't carry the price. Therefore, market always fails to fix the appropriate price for these environmental resources or goods and services, supply and demand. This has resulted in the economic policies taken over the environmental policies. So it means that importance has given to economic policies, environmental policies. So we can discuss all these issues, why government of India has favored even economic development of environment by changing the forest laws in recent years and biodiversity laws, and even reduce the governance or control by the CPCB and other state, central and state pollution control boards. So further, we have this has resulted in the present problem, that is circular flow of global warming or climate change. Economic growth leads to CO2 emissions, driving, that is the driving, heating, cooking, air travel. These are the activities that have resulted in CO2 emissions through economic growth. And this CO2 emissions, rising CO2 emission or concentration in the atmosphere or stratosphere and other forces led to climate change, that is average temperature increase, and precipitation. The rainfall and precipitation have been changing. The patterns of precipitation has changed. So there is a delay in summer season and shrinking of winter, and also sometimes the rainy season. And there is a constant threat and increase in the sea level rise. And further, this resulted in climate change that imposes costs on the society in terms of ecological and economic cost. There are lower agriculture yields, coastal flooding. You might have seen recently in Chennai and Mumbai, and ocean acidification. There is a very frequent occurrences of uh, cyclones due to ocean acidification in the tropical regions, particularly India, where the India is in tropical region. This has led to climate change, and the climate change means on an average increase of temperature to 1 degree Celsius in 2022. And this has been increasing. It has been predicted and forecasted that it will increase to 2 degrees Celsius at this century, at the end of this century. So there are also policies by the international organizations like United Nations organizations, and also UNEP and IPCC, and Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to reduce the emissions of carbon dioxide. There are various policies that have been introduced at the Kyoto Protocol and also Paris Agreement. There is also COP agreements, that is um, uh, recently there was a COP in Dubai. These are all the some of the policies they have aimed to reduce the carbon dioxide, but in reality, they have not yet materialized, except promoting the commercial use of energy in terms of renewable energy, such as uh, the solar energy, wind energy, and also promotion of electric vehicles. Other than that, there are no much improvement in the situation, world situation, in terms of bringing back the environment to uh, its acceptable level, such as afforestation programs and protection of water resources have been received, not received much importance in these policies. Apart from that, many other policies I can talk later. So in the, I don't want to discuss all these things. You know that there is a failure of neoclassical economic school of thought, which has not uh, given importance in both theory and also in practice, even in models, where they constructed the model in such a way that they conveniently excluded the contributions made by the natural capital. They have taken only the physical the man-made capital, human capital, and man-made capital as the main contributors for the economic development. Even though we talk about there are four factors of production: land, labor, capital, and organization. So overemphasis has been given by the economist. Even you can see in the development economics, where Harold Domer and others, they have placed highest importance for capital formation, savings, and etc. They never bothered about how natural capital also contribute to economic development and survival of people, and also access to basic needs. So these are all the failure of a neo classical doctrine that has led to this present problem of we have emphasized the GDP growth rate over equitable growth and also environmentally sustainable development. So there are also cautions by some of the economists, especially in 1982, 1987, where there was a committee Commission on Environment and Development. That is World Commission on Environment Development. That is also popularly known as Brundtland Commission, uh, uh, constituted by the United Nations Organization. And this committee submitted a report by analyzing the or diagnosing the status of environment in the world. So it has clearly stated that a finite world of finite resources will not support indefinite growth in the extraction of those resources. This is the limits to growth model before 1987 World Commission on Environment Development. So these some of these economists have predicted that economy cannot grow in such a way that can limit the resource availability for the future generation. Therefore, there should be limit to growth, and the growth should be most it should take care of both present as well as future needs. So in the followed by the World Commission on Environment and Development, it has given the concept called sustainable development that says that meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs that has to be met for the future generation. That has to be taken care. So meet the needs of present generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. That was the one of the concept which was given for meeting the both intra and intergenerational equity should be achieved by the economic policies that are pursued in the present situation. Later, there was a Earth Summit, and there also they emphasized the sustainable development. But the paradox is that on the one hand, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank, they support the liberalization, globalization, and privatization policies under capitalism, whereas United Nations and UNEP and even IPCC, they try to push the environmental policies towards sustainable development. So there is no clear understanding between these multilateral organizations what needs to be done in terms of achieving sustainable development, at the same time eradicating the poverty and providing employment opportunities and achieve the equitable uh, development. So on the one hand, the World Bank and IMF, they support economic growth, GDP growth rate particularly, and increase in the per capita income. Whereas in the case of United Nations, they try to push their idea to achieve sustainable development, but both the policies, they do not go together. That has resulted in the present outcome. So capitalism has resulted in environmental degradation, and the problem of income inequality has increased to such a level that it has become a threat to achieve economic development also. Because some of the economists, including the Nobel laureates, they emphasize that the present format of income economic inequality that would pose a serious problem for economic development in the future, because it creates more inefficiencies in the system. So this has already created inequality in wealth, and the corporates and private people are they're making money by exploiting the natural resources, and this is causing universal losses in terms of air pollution, water pollution, and climate change. And the poor and the destitute, they are bearing the cost, including we are bearing the cost at the because of the some of the economic activities that generate the pollution. So in this way, what is the challenge and path ahead is the some of the issues I am going to discuss, but there is no time. I'll wind up quickly. And if you look at the economy-wise, world is rich and environmentally it is poorer because of the health and environmental problems are rising. You might have seen throughout the world the frequency of floods and intensity of floods and climate related deaths, and uh, all these have been creating havoc, have been creating a uncertainty for the existence of human being on the mother earth itself. At the same time, when we are promoting economic development, that has not resulted in better economic outcome. If you look at human development index, global hunger index, global slavery index, happiness index, multidimensional poverty index. In case of India, India has failed to achieve all these targets or objectives, despite it is considered to be the fifth largest economy in the world, and it is going to command 30 trillion economy by 2047 when India uh, achieves 100 years of independence. So these are all the economic policies. On the one hand, uh, uh, they clearly shows that they want to achieve higher rate of economic development, but at the same time, they are not addressing the basic fundamental basic needs of the society at large. So poverty, multidimensional poverty, you can see still very high, but still the government claims that nearly 5 lakh people have come out of the poverty, and those are all the figures that are becoming more uh, also controversial nowadays. So there are economists, they have proved wrong about these type of economic policies, including Joseph Stiglitz has criticized the capitalism, and it is for 1% for the, it is of the 1% for the 1% and by the 1%, reflecting income inequality in the world. And also Thomas Piketty has highlighted why the world is going towards have more income inequality, why capitalists are earning more, why not others? Yes, clearly established. Because if the economy is growing at a rate of 7%, the corporates or capitalists, they are earning their profit in around 18 to 19 or 20%. So this is creating income inequality. There is also another economist, uh, Animal Spirits by George Akerlof. He has also criticized the capitalism, and there needs to be government intervention to uh, watch the capitalist. So bring the capitalism in a way that it works for everyone. There is also another economist, Deaton. He has also questioned that the free market economy should be cannot be abolished, but at the same time it should be directed properly to work for the society. So in this way, I have what I have understood. What I have tried to explain here is that so the economic policies pursued by the governments, they are not in a position to uh, improve the environmental quality or improve the environmental services, ecosystem services. And this has resulted in environmental disasters like climate change and COVID-19 and and other problems. So if you look at the temperature rise over a period of time, and still we depend on coal, oil, and gas. This is the fossil fuel that triggers the climate change. And in terms of energy consumption, in China, United States, and India, they are the highest consumers of energy. And they are also polluters in terms of emitting CO2 emission. And China is largely emitting more pollution in the recent times, apart from India. So in this way, this world is not come to a collective decisive action towards addressing the climate change. As a result, the PM10, PM2.5 in India is very alarming. Indian capital city, Delhi, is one of the most polluted city in the world in recent reports. And if you take environmental performance indicators also, The India is the last country out of 180 country in terms of environmental performance. So this clearly shows that Indian economic policies, they do not address the environmental problems which we are facing. And this basically asks the question, economic growth at whose cost? So because the per capita availability of fresh water, both in quality and quantity, has gone down drastically, the air in major cities in India carcinogenic. And this begs the question, economic growth at whose cost and what cost? So I was just talking about environmental performance. So India stands at 180 country, and even the government wants to achieve sustainable development goals, but in reality, these goals cannot be achieved because by 2030, because of insufficient funds and also policy action. So I have questioned all these policies way back, and GDP debate ignores widespread poverty inequality, the pollution, and our growth path is environmentally unsustainable. We need to achieve balanced economic and environmental policies, shadow of poverty on India's climate goals. We need to restructure economy to bring down our vision. So environmental policy goals that should intertwine economic growth with sustainable development is needed. There are also so many policies which favor sustainable development, but they are not being implemented in India, even green GDP. And there is also Dasgupta committee uh, which propounds for importance of natural resources to be given in estimation of GDP, whereas Western countries, especially European countries, they consider the contribution of natural capital in economic development. So recently there is a changes in biodiversity law that may weaken regulation on conservation and protection of biodiversity in India. And these are some of the issues we need to take into account. At the same time, the global finance for climate change is also, climate action is also very weak. And even though 100 billion uh, uh, is estimated for the developing countries, even for India, so even half of it is not coming for the global climate action. So in this way, there is a need for circular economy, reduce, recycle, and reuse in production and consumption system that can take care of a little bit environment, but still the cost and the technology is hindering these adopting circular economy policies. So recently, I have also questioned the India being developed country by 2047 because of the inherent structural macroeconomic problems or weaknesses. So in this way, if you diagnose the state of the environment, the environmental problems are taking over us by surprise, and it may impose a high cost on the society, and they may also cause serious and severe damages to our economic development and economic structures and also livelihood needs. So I stop here. I have taken 5 minutes extra, I think 10 minutes more maybe. I stop here. I'll be happy to discuss and answer some of your questions. I stop sharing.
Thank you, sir, for providing such an enlightening session. The floor is now open for Q&A. Please put your questions in the Q&A box, or you can also raise your hand.
Hello.
Yes, Deepa Netaji, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that presentation, Professor Krishna Raj. My question was around looking at when we're looking at environmental interventions at the community level, they're mostly spearheaded by NGOs and organizations which are much smaller and working with these communities. But somewhere that like macro understanding gets missed is what I feel when practitioners are on the field of what these interventions could employ for the like long term like economic goals, and also how they are correlated to the environmental sort of commitments that we're making on these global platforms, some of which you have kind of uh, like de- explained in detail in your presentation. But what are your thoughts on like bridging that gap is what I wanted to understand, because a lot of these community stewardship based models of intervention for environmental conservation, they seem be linked from a macro level understanding in my experience at the moment. So just wanted to have your opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Your good name?
Dipanita, sir.
Deepanvita, thank you for your very pertinent questions. You're asking the role of NGOs and in managing the environment at the uh, grassroots level. Recently, I delivered one lecture at Nagarjuna University. This is mainly on the role of NGOs in sustainable development. So where I criticize the policies of the government, especially the recent policies, where the government has brought a new regulation that is second. I will open that file and I will explain a little bit. So in this policy, new foreign regulatory uh, policy of fund transfer from foreign countries to NGOs. Basically, this policy was linking it to the Jammu and Kashmir, the Pulwama blast. That blast and also earlier blast where the terrorist groups which were receiving the fund from the foreign countries and using it for the terrorist activities. So that was the basis for which the NGOs have been controlled in India. Even though there are several NGOs, they are working for the tribals, they working for the downtrodden, they working for the environmental issues, etc. But these type of draconian policies have crippled the freedom and also the financial freedom they had. As a result, most of the grassroots NGOs are highly being suffocated, and they have been asked to give their annual financial transactions, and they need to update on the ministry website. And some of these regulations, strict regulations, have resulted in the NGOs are facing a serious threat to their extinction. And that needs to be very seriously needs to be addressed by the present government. Otherwise, the NGOs which have been contributing to achieve sustainable development, including afforestation program, watershed programs, and even agriculture developmental programs and health programs. Many the NGOs, they are the uh, because the government cannot reach everywhere. It is the NGOs, when disaster take place, it is the NGOs that reach first, not the government. So in this regard, we need to redefine development. We need to recognize the contribution of NGOs and their role in economic development and sustainable development. Then only we can achieve a sustainable development as a informed society at the grassroots level. So this is my take. I am searching for that PPT. I missed it, and I'll come back if I get it.
Thank you for that answer, sir. So there's another question on the Q&A box. May I read it out to you?
Yeah, please.
Yes. So this question has been asked by Ankita Ji. She is asking what can be done to bring in circular economy concept. Do traditionally we have had the similar concept existing in a society?
The circular economy concept is not a new one. In India, yes, the question it has put in that perspective. It has been there in India. We have a simple living and we used to recycle the resources we use, and nothing is wasted in the village side. So everything will become another resource. For example, manure, and also we can recover those resources through production system. So this is how it was working. But the present pattern of economic development that relies more on industrial development and industrial use, and most of the products we consume, they are more non-degradable. For example, plastic. So where the consumerism is very high in the society because of the increase in the wealth concentration. You might have seen the big bazaars and palacious malls, which sell all types of resources. So people used to buy more products even though they don't require them to be used. As a result, the waste is more being generated and collected, and that cannot be recycled without the a large system that is in place. For example, in Bengaluru or New Delhi, the municipality or corporation, they cannot make these resources recyclable and reuse. But there are efforts in Bangalore city. We are giving suggestions for Bangalore Climate Action Plan and also for waste management. So there are efforts where waste to energy is being now done in Biddi. Uh, but these efforts have been very limited to some areas or some cities. But the overall, the government should give the direction in such a way that every sector, every household, every person should follow the policy of recycle the resources they use. For example, if they use water bottle, they should sell it to the person where this is going to be recycled. So unnecessarily, it should not be thrown out in the open environment or open places. So this is how we have to responsibly behave. Both production and consumption systems should work in such a direction, such a manner that everyone follow the policy of circular economy. That is called as, in other words, sustainable development or sustainable practices. So government needs to direct such policies in such a way that the all the industries 100% they recycle their resources they generate. For example, if wastewater is generated, they should recycle the wastewater and reuse it. At the same time, if they produce some waste, that waste should be sold to the person where they reproduce from that waste some other resources. So this is how it should work. But there is a policy indecisiveness in this regard. Even though we practice sustainable development and net zero emission by 2070 and etc. But the problem is that the policies are not in the right direction that can make the industry and the consumers responsible one.
There's another question.
Yeah.
Raj Bhatia, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Preksha. Um, Hello, Professor. My name is Neeraj Bhatia, and I work for a non-profit called Waste Warriors in the Indian Himalayan region. And I was very interested by your, statement uh, how political actors are, influencing, environmental policy actions. Unfortunately, you had many slides, but the time was not there to go into things in detail. But I'd like to understand a little bit, keeping in mind the current trends in the government, at least in the past 2 years, there is a clear trend, from the media that it is very pro-capitalistic, right? And even the agenda and the mandate set out to the general public is that this is the growth, that we want. And even as a non-profit where we work in waste management, we reach out to the state level authorities, the government level authorities, the rural development authorities on setting up waste management systems. And the response is always, how many livelihoods and jobs will we create? Is this something that is advantageous for us to partner with you and be an advocate and a proponent of it? So having first-hand experience working with the government, and also the fact that this is the mandate, I would like to understand from you, because you talked about income and wealth inequality very nicely, privatization of profits, but universalization of losses, right? Cement plants are being built left, right, and center for road development, infrastructure development. But what about the air pollution from those cement plants, right? That is, those that is universalizing the losses. So, um, when will the common citizen, see and realize when none of this is really being talked about in the media, or talked about how how the environmental degradation is directly related to economic and capitalistic policies, and what can the active citizen do if they want to to try to to counter some of these policies. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting question, Neeraj. In fact, I had been visiting to Himalayan regions, especially the Uttarakhand. The nature and the pattern of development that is taking place, that is going to destroy most of the Himalayan environment. You know that recent floods of tourists to the Chardams, and the waste they are generating. You are the waste warrior also. You're coming from that organization. And the rivers, the very beautiful and virgin rivers, they are being highly polluted with plastics. That really worrying one. The way they are creating infrastructure in the fragile mountain system, that caters the needs of the larger economy rather than the local economy. The local people who are the sufferers, who are bearing the cost of all this, including health cost, environmental cost, and also livelihood loss. And who are the people who are going to Uttarakhand for Char Dhams? Additionally, larger people or larger region citizens or people who are going there as a tourist, but they are not responsibly behaving in such an fragile environment. And government is promoting such tourism activities. It is not basically ecotourism, it is a religious tourism, and that results in catastrophic impact on the region and also on the society. So even though we emphasize in our policies and even our discourse, but the intention and intentness, the aim or objective of the government policies is to promote economic growth at any cost. That is the what we call it as the decision they have taken. So in this regard, even though they push for sustainable developmental policies, but they do not really work where the carrying capacity has already been destroyed. I stop here, Neeraj. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir, you did. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. If any more questions are there, please put them in the Q&A box and they would be addressed later on. Thank you, sir, for your comprehensive and engaging talk. We hope to see you in further IMPRI events as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Preksha. Shall I leave the meet? Shall I leave the meeting?
Yes, sir, if you want to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next session, I am honored to invite Dr. Parashram Jakappa Patil ji, Agriculture and Natural Resources Economist and also visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI. Sir will guide us through the topic of agrobiodiversity and nutritional security. We welcome you, sir. The floor is all yours. Sorry, everybody. Sir is trying to join the meeting. Just bear with us for a moment. And meanwhile, if anybody has any if anybody has any doubts regarding the abstracts, they can discuss it here. Deepanita ji, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I mean, I heard that in the last meeting that we will submit and then get a feedback on it. So is that feedback going to be after a certain time period, or I mean, when can we expect? Because I have submitted but not received any feedback on it or confirmation on it.
Deepanita ji, we have received your submission and we have further conveyed it to the chair. So we're just waiting for remarks from their side. Once they have reverted back, you'll receive it. Generally, it'll be very prompt. So do not worry about that one. Probably in a few days, you'll receive whatever the feedback chair has to give on that.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Also, please note those who have yet to submit the abstract, please do so at the earliest. Yes, you can mute yourself, Neeraj ji.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the presentation content from the speakers. Will that also be available to us? Because I see what's being emailed to us is the video recording. I was wondering if the actual presentation files will also be available to us.
Regarding the presentation files, it's not in the let's say it's not the general procedure that we provide the presentations, because it's the expert's property basically. So what we can do is that the participants can write to the experts in case they want the presentations from their side, or you can also ask us to get a hand on certain presentations that you are exclusively seeking, and we can relay it on to the experts, and then they can provide us the presentations. It is for the same reason that we do provide the videos, so that whatever the expert is presenting is available to be later seen by all the participants.
That's fine. Thank you. Understood. And if we need to get in touch directly with any of the speakers on seeking their permission to get access to their presentation, will you be sharing us an email address?
Yes. We will be sharing the email address. You can write to us regarding that. If you even write to us at learning@impri, the same email ID that we've been using to do conversation with you so far, that will also let us know that you want a certain person's ID or you want a certain person's presentation.
Great. Thank you so much.
Regarding the abstracts, are there any participants who have not yet discussed? Since we have the time for now, maybe we can go ahead with that also. We don't have Ankita ji. Yes, please go ahead.
I wanted to check with you. So for submitting the abstract, so do we need to, so in the final assignment that we'll be working on, so do we need to rely on secondary research, or primarily we have to, conduct the research pertaining to the topic that we have decided? Could you please help me understand that?
Sure. Could you tell us what your topic is?
I have yet to finalize that, so which I will do by tomorrow, and I'll submit the abstract.
The general idea, so that we know like what kind of fieldwork, if you're looking to do, what kind is it?
That will be difficult for me, and that's the reason I'm asking. Like, if so basis that only I'll select my topic. So in case if it will more of secondary information is available pertaining to the topic, then I'll go for that, because doing a primary research would be a challenge and a constraint for me. That's the reason.
Okay, all right. You can do both secondary and primary. For
Okay.
for any primary work, then for that I think we would also need to gain some insights into your abstract, so we can know like exactly how much work is going to go into the primary part of it.
I'll take
Yes.
care of that.
Yeah, if you just submit it to us, then we can provide you further guidance on that one.
Sure. Thanks for
Darshan
that.
ji, yes, all right. Darshan ji, please go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're on.
Yes, actually, I also had the same doubt. I also am yet to like decide properly on my topic. I also wrote a mail at learning at IMPRI, but I got no response. It has been quite some time since I have written the mail, so I'm looking forward actually.
If you want, you can discuss it here also.
Yeah, like the thing is that I wanted to write something on climate relating inequality to climate change, but the problem is that I think the sources what I am finding are not quite onto the point. So I was a little bit confused whether I should write on this topic, and whether like there is much of a scope in writing in this topic. That's what I was confused about.
It's inequality and climate change, is it?
Yes, yes, yes. Climate change policies and inequality.
Okay, Darshanji, there are a lot of AI tools for literature review. Why don't you try some of them?
Uh, yes, sir. I am actually, reviewing some content, but like,
AI के बहुत सारे आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस के ना बहुत सारे टूल्स हैं टू डू लिटरेचर रिव्यू. वो आपको सारा लिटरेचर भी खोज के दे देगा. देयर इज एलिसिट. आप उसको ऐसे लिखोगे ना, एआई टूल्स फॉर लिटरेचर रिव्यू. मैं कुछ वेबसाइट्स के नाम बता देता हूँ. एलिसिट, ELICIT. इस तरह की काफी वेबसाइट्स हैं. अगर आप उसमें ट्राई करेंगे ना, अपना जो एग्जैक्ट टॉपिक सोच रहे हो उसके आगे पीछे भी कुछ डालेंगे ना, तो आपको बहुत सारा लिटरेचर रिव्यू मिल जाएगा. इफ यू आर अनेबल टू फाइंड रिसोर्सेज, and if you are not able to find resources after many searches, then I think it would be a good idea to stick to that topic, because उस पे उतना काम नहीं हुआ.
okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Is it making any sense? But
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
if you're not able to find resources or literature, that's a genuine concern. But try using some AI tools that will help. It may happen that you will not find literature pertaining to India, but then you will find literature pertaining globally or in other parts of the world. That can also do.
Yes, sir. I'll definitely do check out them and will write at least. Thank you so much, sir.
Please do that and then write back to us.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Do we have anybody else also wants to discuss their abstract or have any confusion?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Can you
Yes,
hear?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see me also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, should I begin?
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our next session, I am honored to invite Dr. Parashram Patil ji, Agricultural and Natural Resources Economist and visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI. Sir will guide us through the topic of agrobiodiversity and nutritional security. We welcome you, sir. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And good afternoon to all of you. And first of all, thank you, IMPRI, for giving me this an opportunity. And my sincere apology for joining late because the link is not working. So thank you for your patience. Now, when we talk about the agriculture, nutrition, and security, all we know that we are the agriculture economy. Our economy is dominated by agriculture. Most number of people in our country depends on agriculture, and agriculture is so crucial that it has to feed to our 140 crore people. So when we talk about the agriculture and nutritional food security or nutritional security, there are many things to be deal with it. For example, you have to think about what is status of your soil. You have to think about what is status of your natural resources in terms of water. You have to think about what is the productivity of your soil, how much water you are using. There are many things. And if you see the statistically, India is the undernourished country. Still 40% people of our country is undernourished. It means that the producing food is not just sufficient. Whether that produced food, the consumed food, whether it is nutrition sufficient or not. So which is not in the case of India. We have achieved the status that we are the self-sufficient in terms of availability of the food. But whether that food is nutritionally available, whether that food is nutritious, because we see there is a lot of issues in terms of zinc deficiency, in terms of iron deficiency, in terms of protein deficiency. So just food is not sufficient. Whether that food is a nutrition sufficient, that we have to be checked. Now India has reached at such stage where we don't have a problem of availability of food. We have a problem of whether that food is nutritional sufficient or not. Because when your income gets rise, for example, if your income gets double, it doesn't mean that you are going to consume the food normally you take it. Your food plate is not getting double, or your rice is not getting double. Your other intake is not going to double. Only thing is that has been replaced by nutritious thing. For example, you will have more fruits, you will have more meat product, you will have more milk product. So this is all about. So we have to check this now. Before that, we will start from our agriculture things. See, agriculture productivity is very crucial. Unless you are a crop, your agriculture is diversified in terms of crops, your agriculture is environmentally suitable, till that you will not achieve your nutritional security. It is all about food. You have to see whatever you will grow, that will come to your plate. More number of people, everything cannot buy, everything cannot import, everything you cannot see that everything will come from the outside the country. Everything has to see whether it is available to mass amount of population with their with the affordability of their expenses. So just see what the India's agriculture is major problem is facing today is the crop diversification. If you see, our agriculture has slanted towards the monoculture. For example, I will give one example. Check the status of Indian export. India is the #1 exporter in the rice. India is the largest exporter in the world for rice. But to produce 1 kg of rice, you require 5,000 liters of water. And India at present is the #1 rice exporter in the world. You just compare. When we exporting the rice, we are not exporting the rice. We are exporting 5,000 liters of water per kg of rice. So you are exporting valuable natural resources to the rest of the world. Where your water table is depleting by 1 centimeter. So how we are going to achieve the biodiversity into the agriculture if this is the situation? Take another example of sugar. Still, India is one of the largest exporter of sugar. Again, to produce 1 kg of sugar, you require at least 2,000 to 3,000 liters of water. So when we are already in the water deficient country, our water table is going by every year 1 meter, which is not refreshable, which is not recoverable. How we are going to achieve the agriculture biodiversity? So that matter is not only about the environmental sustainability, it is also concerned with your food intake, because number of or more crops diverted towards the cash crops, towards the cashew, towards the rice, or towards the sugarcane, for example. So you will have very less amount of concentration to produce the other crop, which is highly nutritious. To just have the consumption of the rice or wheat will not give you the sufficient nutrition things. you have to see whether your country is sufficiently producing the horticulture crops, which is more nutritious. You have to see whether your country is sufficiently produce the animal products, which is more nutritious. For example, poultry. In India's entire agriculture sector, you would see that one sector is growing by 8 or 9%, which is 100% profit. That is a poultry. So you can see amount of consumption is is increasing in India in terms of, because poultry or chicken give you more protein. So you have to see this entire thing in terms of these consequences. And the beautiful thing about India is that we are very naturally biodiverse country. For example, take the example of honey. The government of India's rule is that to the honey is you can bring honey market only when that honey has the 250,000 pollen count per milligram. If that is not there, then your honey is not consumable. You just check it now, whatever honey you are consuming, how much pollutant that is having. This is the basic thing I'm talking about, the nutritionality. And if you see the role of honeybees into the nature, without honeybee, there is no cross pollination. If there is no cross pollination, there is no product, there is no food. So everything is got. So when we talk about nutritionability of the food, we also talk about the nutritionability of the what is the impact is having on the agriculture and biodiversity. So agriculture and biodiversity and nutritional food security, we have to see one hand in hand. Just we talk about the rice, or we just talk about the sugarcane, or we just talk about the honeybees. And if you see the availability of nutritious food in India, I don't think so. I don't think that there is any deficiency, or there is not lack of availability. We have sufficient amount of food. For example, take the nutritious food, or talk about the horticulture products. India is you will find, if you list the 10 horticulture product producing in the world, you will find India is always there into top country. Maybe the mango, maybe the cashew, maybe the other horticulture crops. Only thing is that whether that things is going or is reaching to the common man plate, or whether the common man or general public is aware about that they have to consume these nutritious things. If they don't have to consume nutritious things, they are going to, health-wise, they are going to deteriorate it. Whether that awareness is there in India, that we have to check. I think that awareness is now slowly growing up. So there is availability of food, but maybe in terms of the costing, or maybe in terms of not aware, this is not this nutrition is not picked in India. For example, cashew growers. If you go to the cashew growers and you just ask in India, the western part of India, where the cashew is a major crop, hardly you will find cashew grower flowers are consuming the cashew nut. It is because they don't feel that it is highly nutritious, because they are not aware about they have to consume it. So this is the situations in everywhere in India. So that's why agriculture, biodiversity, and food nutrition is very important. And I'm glad that IMPRI has taken, or IMPRI would like to discuss this issue. Now you see the what is the major nutritional food security, or what is the major nutritious thing that is lacking in India. You see, there is a zinc. Zinc will come from the animal product. Those are the really regular meat eater. You won't find that they have a zinc deficiency. But zinc can also be found, get it from so many other horticulture crops, or whether other agriculture goods from India, where zinc deficiency can be removed from it. Whether that awareness is there, or whether we have producing sufficient amount of that zinc. Again, you see the protein. Again, you see the calcium. So many things are there where India is lacking in some nutritional food security, which we need to. That's why if you go to there is one tehsil called in Maharashtra, is called as Shirol. Or if you go to the Punjab, every day there is one trend, it's called cancer trend. More number of cancer patients are increasing. The reason is that highest amount of pesticides, highest amount of fertilizers, and there are many other chemical, chemical input to the crops that directly come into your plate or food. So that causes too many disease. I was just having the word with one of the doctor with the Washi, Mumbai, where they have biggest TB hospital in the world, Asia. He was telling number of diseases can be tackled just having a calcium C product, just having the vitamin C things. For example, litrus, or just example orange, or just example you call the IMPRI, or just example the things which is coming directly from the vitamin C. But are we aware? And if you go to the western part, if you go to the villages, all the trees of Imli, or all the trees of the oranges, or all the trees of amla, just cut it down. By default, from centuries and centuries, we were having the largest amount of nutritious food production tank, because our culture, our agriculture was in that way, because we were not producing only onto the rice, or we were not only concentrating on wheat. Just laterally, this 50-60 years, which has thing happened because we shifted to the cash crops. Otherwise, our agriculture was in the combination of that many things. We were having horticulture products also, we were having the spices products also, we were having the cereals also. I will give you one example. In the COVID time, the spices export of India's spices export has been raised by 34 or 40% suddenly. When we analyze what is the reason for that, and that spices export directly import come from the European countries, and we analyze what is the reason for that. The reason for that, in order to fight the COVID, you have to increase the fighting capacity of your body. So you need such a things, you have to consume such a things where that kind of input will provide to the body. And the spices in the spices have the highest amount of that capacity which will give to the body. If you consume the spices, your boosting power will increase. So that's why there was huge demand from the Western world for the spices, and the world's 80% spices produced by India only. So what is my point here? We have that things. We have spices, we have horticulture products, we have meat products, we have other things where you can get the nutritious things. But are we sufficient enough to understand, or are we sufficient enough, or are we sufficient devoting our concentration that has to reach to the plate? If it is not reaching to the plate, then it is a serious issue for nutritious things. For example, if you divided agriculture into two parts, that first part was the green revolution, that we have to produce anyhow sufficient food to our people. That was the experiment which we are successful. Now we have a huge amount of food funds. Now we don't have any shortage of the foods. We have sufficient food. That we were success now. That was the things. But how long we are carrying on these things only, that just we have to produce the sufficient food, or we are not concentrating on nutritious things. Now time has come that we have to see whether our agriculture is nutritionally sufficient, whether our agriculture is producing nutritious thing, or whether we have to see whatever we are consuming, whether whatever we are consuming, are we are getting nutritious things from that. For example, if you go to the Western world, you will find that the consumption pattern. If you go to the Europe, or if you see the American people, you see their consumption pattern, you see their food plate. You will see there was one butter. You will see always there is bread into it. You will see always there is bread. There will see always there is some a little bit about the meat, and the rest of the things are processed food. For example, you will see the you will see the baby corn. You will see the what we call this. You will see that cucumber, like that product, nutritious horticulture crops. horticulture products, which will give you more nutritious. We have to see also that. But the best thing in India is that we need not to depend on the processed foods, because we produce huge amount of fresh foods every day, because our agricultural condition is so that we are blessed with it. We have to just convert that into, or we have to just reach those things to our plate, so that our people will get the nutritious food, our malnourishment will go down, and we will see healthy picture in India. Now, second, the last point I want to discuss here is that, what about the agriculture biodiversity? What about the nutritionality of our agriculture? For example, if you see our horticulture, we see the input things to our agriculture, fertilizer. Our fertilizer bill, subsidy bill is cross more than 2 lakh crores. So you can imagine how much artificial fertilizer we are giving to our farm, our agriculture. Are we convert? Are we go for the biofertilizer? Can we go for the organic fertilizer, so that organic matter of our land will intact? For example, there was interesting research or interesting work done by the Professor Ratan Lal, who is Indian scientist, worked into the USA, and he got the food prize for 2020. What was his research? His research, or his contribution is that he told clearly, now time has come that instead of giving to the artificial fertilizer to the crop or to land to increase the productivity, we have to convert our things into the organic things. We have to preserve, or we have to protect organic matter into the soil, that will taken care of entire productivity of your land, and you will get a good amount of productions. What we are doing now, we are just putting the artificial input in terms of fertilizer, pesticides, chemical. In order to your land must be productive, you should have a 2.5% pH level, 2.5% carbonic matter. Just check it. Punjab has 0.5%. How your land will be fertile? And this is happening slowly. So this pH level is getting deteriorated in the rest of the India also, because we are not giving sufficient amount of time or concentrations to this entire. So that's why I'm talking the agriculture biodiversity and nutritional food security has a very close relation. So that's why I'm happy that we are discussing here the food security. The next generation will take the inspiration, or next generation take the measures from that, and they will work on agriculture biodiversity and nutritional food security. So thank you. This is from my brief introduction, or brief about the agriculture biodiversity and nutritionality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your comprehensive talk. Participants can now put their questions in the Q&A box or raise a hand to ask their questions. Yes, Dipandita ji, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that talk. So I just wanted to ask about organic farming, since I mean, the impetus of the government, or this current government, has also been around taking up organic farming at a larger scale, than before. But when we go into rural communities, sometimes the question that comes up is that it's not very cost effective in terms of getting the resources, and it also requires maybe more labor. So just from your understanding, just wanted to get your views on, is it really efficient in given the Indian landscape to look at organic farming at that scale that we are sort of promoting right now, given the rural communities' views also? And if it is or it is not, then what measures would you suggest, or alternatives would you suggest if it's not really efficient? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dipinta. So thank you. It's a very good question, and I'm glad that the young generation putting this question. See, there are two things here. Organic things, why it has come organic things? Because of these health issues, because of this nutritionality. Now we have enough understanding that if you don't get a sufficient food, quality food, we are definitely going to have a problem. But in the organic thing, the issue is that still India, first thing is that organic food market is not developed. It's very difficult to differentiate from the organic product or non-organic product. Second, the cost of cultivation for the organic thing is higher level. So it's very difficult for the farm, because in India we have 85% farmers, small and marginal farmers. Their resources are limited. For them to do organic farming is costly. And even though it is not that they are going to get this 100% that market for the organic thing, you need very systematic efforts to get the premium price for organic market. You require very lot of efforts for that. You require different kind of value chain, or you have to export it. This is very difficult for the organic small and marginal farmers in India. But India is doing extremely well. India is developing extremely well organic market, organic cultivations. Organic cultivations increase here. More number of farmers are getting connected here. And we also have done the sufficient amount of organic export also, which is increasing over year by. I would suggest you just go and check the APEDA's website, that how much work they are doing into the organic farming export, APEDA website. Second, if you ask me to how to promote the organic farming, or if you see how to cultivate the cost of, reduce down the cost of cultivation of it, the one thing is that we have to shift it to the agroforestry. For example, cashew nut. India is the global leader in cashew nut. Global leader. But if you see, cashew cultivation in India still is the wild crop. It is not a primary crop. It is not a commercial crop. Very less. There is no input. Even there is no, other than Kerala, there is no artificial input to the cashew crop. And that cashew crop, if you see the cultivation, they are on the hills. So by default, cashew is the organic, or not only organic, more than organic. So we adopting the agroforestry practices, we can convert maximum thing into the organic thing, and so that our farmers need not worry about the cost of cultivation. I'm putting this I'm inside cashew growing farmer. So we done a lot of things. So not only that, and second thing is that India has a 2 biodiversity hub. So we have huge agroforestry with us. We have huge forest with us, and that can be converted into agroforestry. So the future of that's why the food nutritional security we can achieve only when our 30% regular foods will come from the forest, agroforestry. So agroforestry, we have to connect agroforestry with the organic farming. We will get a good result. I hope I answer you the question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
You can also see the World Agroforestry Center, Deepak.
Thank you for that answer, sir. So there's another question that has come up. The question revolves around how climate change has been impacting our agricultural practice, and whether our country and government has been taking sort of certain measures, and if not, what would you suggest that should be done or could be done
I will
better?
explain this. Yes. I will explain this question with the very practical example. See, in the rural area, if you come to the Western Maharashtra or anywhere, wherever the rice is growing and where the water availability is there. Earlier, the rice cultivation only at the time of monsoon. It will start in the month of June and it will harvest in the month of normally into the month of October, November. Because this rice crop is required more amount of water, excess water is required. But last 10 years, what is happening? At the time of harvesting, there is a rain. Constantly rain in the month of October, November. Whenever these crops come for the harvesting, there is a rain. So last 10 years, the people are getting constant loss at the end. The major thing is that it is not about the loss of rice. It is equally loss of the fodder, which is more important for the rural economy, because animal husbandry is the crucial component for rural economy for the farmer. So now what the farmers are doing, now they are very smart. Now they have shifted. Now they are starting the rice cultivations into the summer season. They start rice cultivation into the December and they harvest into the time of May, because the climate change impact. But what is the problem? I told you to produce 1 kg of rice, you require 5,000 liters of water. Because of this cultivation, time shifting, season shifting, our water table, farmers are getting the rice productions, farmers are getting the fodder production, but our water table is getting down and down and down, and our entire cycle gets changed. This is what the climate change is doing for us. So the biggest challenge for in front of us is the climate change. That's why you see right now, you must have heard about the India banned the wheat export. Do you know? We have already stocked whatever we require stock to feed entire India. 3 times that more stock we are having. Still we restrict our export ban because the threat of the climate change. We don't know what will happen next year. We don't know what will happen after that next year. So we are sufficiently putting the stock into it. So this is the answer of the climate. It's very, very, that's why if you see now the climate smart agriculture practices is coming down. There are separate climate change funds are coming down. But again, the answer for this is the agroforestry. If we convert our thing into agroforestry, maximum amount of climate change impact will nullify. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So this next question comes from Tanisha Upadhyay. She asks that tribals are the greatest victim of environment change and their cultivation land is taken and exploited, and at the same time they are also victims of food crisis and also suffer most from malnutrition. So how can we focus on putting tribals into agriculture, and are there any traditional practices, and how can we also educate them to sort of incorporate them into nutritional farming?
Very good question. For here also, I will give one practical example. Just this one, Andhra Pradesh, Araku. Yes, there is a place you everyone know about the Araku Hills. It is in Andhra Pradesh. There are tribal there. By traditions, that are these Araku Hill people tribals, they are collecting the coffee seeds and they were buying into the local market. But the entire these coffee seeds which were they were collecting, they are very, very, very environment very naturally it has income because it's a forest only. Main source of income for them is that only. But one of the gentlemen is, I will tell you name is later, what he did, because he understand that forest, these tribal people are staying at the Araku Hills, collecting that coffee seeds and sending that coffee, selling that coffee seed to nearby market. So 2-3 example here. One example is here that it is very limited because seeds are very limited because it's naturally grown. It has not been grown because whatever the naturally grown, it has been collected from that one. So it's very limited. It's 100% pure. It is because into the forest, or it is because into the deep forest of Araku Hills. And third, these people are doing this coffee seeds, collecting or selling, this is doing by hundreds of years. So they have a very strong knowledge. So 2-3 things, it's very limited, very natural, and it is done by hundreds of years. So what the gentleman is did, he understood everything. And if you see the Europe is they are very much fond of the coffee. In London, they put one coffee shop. Gave name is the Araku Hills. And what he did, he told that how he advertised. He advertised that this is a very limited. It's come from the Araku Hill seeds. It's a very limited. If you want, you have to order 1 day before. It's a very limited. It's a very natural because it has come from the one of the precious Western Ghat of the world, Western of India, which is in India. And it's very limited. Now that copy there in London, it is buying by consuming people by advance booking. They are getting 2,000 rupees per cup, 3,000 per rupees. That experiment has been done by our Narayan Murthy. So what is my point here? My point is here that our forests and tribals have a huge traditional knowledge. They have huge knowledge of the forest, agroforestry, and they are sustaining their lives thousands of years, even in the hardest of the hard conditions. Only matter is that first thing we have to see how they can be a nutritious, secure. First thing is that whatever they should not consume only the rice, or they should not only consume the fruit. We have to see how we can make them first nutrition security, first improve their health. And third, we see that how we can, whatever they produce or whatever they have, with the example of Narayan Murthy I just give you, can be connect to the market so that they also get the good amount of margin for their money. So their life will be increased. One of the experiment in terms of bamboo is going on into this. If you go to the Maharashtra's Gadchiroli and that what the non-timber forest product collections in collection is collections non-timber forest product like shikakai, honey, like other products. Now the forest has taken a lot of initiative. They are putting their collections of peace. One of experience, it is in my nearby village where the forest is putting the forest product collection center where they are selling these local tribals collected the crop, they collected the products like honey, bay leaf, shikakai. They bring it to their collection center and they're selling to the nearby people. So there are a lot of things are happening in India. By this way, they really need some time, but by this way we can slowly solve this problem. But yes, tribals concern in terms of nutrition security is the challenge the country like India, which has a huge forest and which has huge agricultural base. Yes.
Thank you so much for your answers, sir. Moving on, we would like to thank you for such a comprehensive and engaging talk, and we hope that we keep learning on from you in further IMPRI events as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Best wishes all of you. Thank you.
Preksha, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, please continue.
Yeah. So with this, we would like to move on to our final session for the day. For this final session, I would like to invite Ms. Meena Vaidyanathan, founder of Neeti Consulting. Ma'am will be guiding us on the topic of environment, social and governance, ESG. We welcome you, ma'am. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to take this session. I hope everyone can hear me and see me.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if those who have muted can just unmute yourself and just put yourself on video for just maybe a few minutes. I just want to sort of see who is here with us today, and if that's okay. And I would like to hear from you maybe just for the first few minutes before I introduce myself and what I'm going to talk about here, as to what your expectations of this session is. I would really, whoever can. Sorry?
No, ma'am, please go ahead.
Okay. So if you're not able to switch on your video or able to unmute, if you could just share on the chat window in terms of what you expect from this session. We have about an hour, and I can just make sure then I address really what you're expecting from this session instead of just going about in a monologue.
So I can start. My name is Neeraj Bhatia, and I am a senior manager at a non-profit that works in waste management in the Indian Himalayan region. I joined this course with IMPRI to basically get a more broader idea of environmental policy. Ms. Vaidyanathan, I'm particularly interested in.
Meena. I mean, I think it's good. I think we're all fellows here, so.
Sounds good. Meena, I'm particularly interested in, the sort of ESG trends in the private sector, right? To understand whether a lot of these are very broad theoretical in terms of how they are progressing, what is the mandate, what is the accountability with regards to ESG, or is it more from a branding side, from a side where there's more investment? So a little bit of that. On where
Sounds good.
it.
Thank you. Thank you, Neeraj. Anyone else who wants to share what you're expecting from the session? I think the more open we are, I think it'll be useful for everyone. Otherwise, I'll just come, go speak a few things and just go off. Otherwise, Neeraj and I will just talk to each other like it's a private conversation between us, and you're all just audience. I'm sure you don't want that. Yes,
Hi, can you hear me?
Anvesha, yes, please.
Okay, sorry, I also can't start my video for some reason.
No
So I'm a student of physics actually, so with inclination towards environment and environment policies.
Lovely.
So for this, from this session, I just want to at least understand the basics and yeah, then tailor it to how I can take it forward with me.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anvesha. Yeah, Deepanita, you had unmuted yourself.
Hi, Meena. So I work with also with a research organization, and I've been working in monitoring and evaluation and gender research, specifically around gender and climate and land use for a couple of years now. I've also briefly worked in the corporate sector, a brief stint. So that makes me interested in understanding ESG more closely, and also like I know that I might have like some very wrong notions of it in terms of just evaluating through standards, evaluating businesses, evaluating their work. And also, this fellowship is important because for me, it's interesting that I work with rural communities, but funding predominantly comes from the private space. So, really, that complex between private and non-profit entities in this space is very important. That's what I want to look at.
Great, great. Thank you, Deepanita. Anyone else? Tanisha or Shabani, if you're not able to switch on the camera, that's okay. If you can just
Is it
speak.
audible?
Yes, please.
Audible?
Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yes, maybe Shabani first and then Tanisha or.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Is it audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Shravani. So currently I'm doing my diploma from IIGL Delhi in GGS, Governance and Government Studies. So there, in our curriculum, there was one chapter which was related to Sustainable Development Goals and what India is looking up uh, to to like implement all those goals by 2030 to achieve the agenda. 2030 agenda. So from there, I got interested into this course and I joined this course to explore more about that. Mainly, what I'm looking forward is to know about more about how the new technology in terms of like AI and all of this, which are coming in this decade, not in this decade, previously also, how they will contribute to engage the most lower community, the like NGOs, the small NGOs, yeah, the NGOs and all whoever are contributing in like this in sustainability policy making or whatever the reforms are coming, how we can engage them through the use of technology. So basically, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to conversing with you. Yes, Tanisha, you were.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
So myself, Tanisha Upadhyay. I have just completed my bachelor's in political science. Currently, I'm a student. I started for preparing for UPSC CSE, and meanwhile, I realized that for years we are reading magazines, we are reading issues, but nothing is changing. So, what is the actual reason? So, I realized too that I am really passionate to work in policy making of India. So that, and I really aim to work for welfare of people, because coming from a very very rural area, I have realized there are lots of issues and there's really lacking of government policies at a local level. So I just and with this program, I hope that I will learn basics of policy making and will work good for the people. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone who shared their views. I'm sure as we go along this, the next 45, 50 minutes or so, we will be, talking more. And I'm hoping that, you will all interact. Please pause and stop me or share your comments on the chat window if your video or audio is not good. we'll make sure that this conversation remains something that will encourage people like you. I can see so much energy in all of you, and so much passion and drive to be the change. So for that, you need to make sure that you're able to get your voice heard. So please speak. I'm happy to be stopped at any time. Please call me Meena. I'd rather have a conversation with you and share my experiences. So if everybody's ready, I will start now. I'm going to share I have a small presentation. So I'm going to, Preksha, it's possible for me to share my deck, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Meena ji, you can see share screen. The green below.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. Actually, I'm not able to see the share screen. That's why just. I was just about to see it and then I didn't. So let me just. Yeah. Can everyone see my slide?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
All right. My name is Meena Vaidyanathan, and I've been a social entrepreneur for the last 15 years. And I've been in very mainstream global corporate jobs for the first 15 before that. So I have a fairly long experience. I will complete 30 years actually this month of my career. And I'm super happy always to meet young people who have the passion and the drive to be the change. Even after all these years, I still feel like I'm just raring to go. So it's always wonderful to meet with people who have a similar mindset. It's actually with this mindset that we set up Niti Consulting in 2009, 14 years back, where the aim was to try and look at implementation focused consulting. The first year that I made the switch in 2008 from the corporate side to the development sector, I realized that there were many ways or many things that in which one could do consulting, and the typical corporate type consulting and the work that we did, I had to really unlearn a few things. And I felt like there were so many opportunities and so many organizations, so many projects and so many areas that could where we could actually create innovative systems, innovative processes and change practices that could actually lead to more sustainable impact. That was the objective with which Niti was set up. Because we wanted to be the change, there were a lot of things that we did which were pretty unheard of at that time in 2009. For example, we started off as and still are a private limited company, which was definitely not common then, and which is kind of, you see more of that today, but it was not common then. We set up as a virtual company way back in 2009 when it was not the norm and the pandemic still hadn't hit and Zoom was not a hit. And the aim of setting up a virtual company was we wanted to make sure that geography was never a limitation to whoever wanted to contribute, and all that we looked for was diversity in its truest sense and excellence in its truest sense. So we continue to be virtual today. And now, of course, a whole lot of people post the pandemic, thankfully, are sort of familiar with what it is to work remote. But yeah, so we've kind of made it into a fine science. And we work by default, and the way, virtue of how we work, we've worked very, very closely with our partners and clients. We don't call them clients because the way we work and our method of approach for working is not really that of a vendor or a consulting firm. So on one hand, we work with implementation and grassroots organizations like Ajivika Bureau, who are the most leading organization in the migrant in the space of working with migrant populations, or in terms of our work with GGBK in Bengal, or TDH, organizations like that, that work really at grassroots, Sequin. Or on the other hand, we also work at impact investing level. We work with likes of Nilekani Philanthropies, with Oak Foundation, or in terms of networks like Ashoka, like Will Grow, or organizations, incubators like that. Or we also work with institutions like IIM Ahmedabad. We've also worked within the Institute for Human Settlements, and similar such organizations. We largely work in India, but we've also done some projects outside of India as well. So what I'm going to discuss today is really the business costs of being unsustainable. I had listened to the previous speaker, maybe just about 5 minutes or so when I came in. And I think as fellows, it's important for you to get a sense of how things are at various in various areas, various sectors, right? So maybe one person would sort of tell you more about how it is to work around ecology and ecology issues and how to sort of input policy around that. So what I'm hoping to do, and I was glad to hear that from someone, some of you today, is that I'm going to look at this interface between business, policy, and what is it that we could do around ESG, around SDG, what is currently happening, and not, like some of you also mentioned, not what's happening 30,000 feet above the ground, but what action can happen and what is the real change or what is the real impact that can happen, because of which one can actually look at policy and look at policy change in a more structured and more effective manner. So let's first talk about what is the economic impact of unsustainable practices, really. So the biggest cost, and if I can just bucket them in 5 areas. So one is reduced productivity, increased costs, increased health burden, freedom to operate, and paucity of raw materials. Let's talk about each one of them in a little bit of detail. So let's talk about paucity of raw materials. The first thing that comes to mind, anytime there is any conversation around sustainability or climate change or risk or environmental risk. So typically, firstly, anyone who talks about sustainability by default always 90% of times talks about environment only, which I think is the biggest gap. But even if you do that, so they always talk about, oh, it'll lead to scarcity, or it'll lead to those. So you shouldn't use fossil fuels, for example, or you should conserve water. I mean, we are people who are in Delhi currently are bearing the brunt of water scarcity within like a month of really heavy temperatures. And we know now what it can do to reduce productivity or, bring I think the topic is not matching with the sentence that I've written, but in terms of paucity of raw materials, that scarcity costs. Increased costs, what does that mean? So if, for example, water is not available to businesses, I mean, Bangalore suffered this and it continues to suffer, right? So what does it mean? So hotels were not giving out their rooms as recent as 2 months back in Bangalore because they had run out of water in several areas. And it had led to increased costs for hotels, for offices, etc., because they had to buy water or source water from other sources. And therefore, it also then leads to engaging in unsustainable practices, like digging the borewell deeper than what the law permits, etc., which again, not just increases costs, but also enables people to sort of face legal action, etc., which again, further can increase costs. The third one is environmental degradation, and as well as social trauma can actually lead a significant impact on public health. We've talked about, how increase in pollution, for example, can lead to higher degree of respiratory diseases. Therefore, there is a increase of spending on health, also burden on healthcare infrastructure, which sort of leads to, sort of like a cycle, which has an impact on everyday life. And these are some real-time examples and inputs and touch points of how a larger phenomenon like climate change or pollution or even bad workplace practices can have in terms of impact on public health, which can strain the economy. Reduce productivity. If you create workspaces that are not social, that are not comfortable, that are not healthy, it actually leads to real-time business issues, leading to economic impact in terms of having, say, bad teamwork, so because of which you don't have innovation, or which sort of impacts productivity, or which impacts sort of poor succession or higher costs of hiring people, etc., etc. And the last but not the least, and in my mind, what I think organizations should sort of take into cognizance is a lot of issues around sustainability. Now people talk about the need for compliance. But I think it's also, and we'll talk about it during the talk today, in terms of in how many different ways can we look at compliance. One is in terms of just the government regulations. It could also be in terms of not so mandatory, but important alignment to domestic international norms, their customers, markets, etc., which, if you don't comply with, can actually restrict any organization's ability to operate or expand to their fullest potential. We've got a number of examples like that, right? We've had examples like Byju's, for example, where issues around governance has actually led now for the company to not operate to its full potential. And it's got sort of a lot of issues. We've got examples like Paytm. And when we talk about sustainability, somehow governance takes the least precedence, because when you think about sustainability, you only think, typically, first thing that crosses your mind, you think of environment, which is important. But I think it's also important to understand the S and the G, which are equally important, which can impact productivity, which can impact your freedom to operate, which can impact increase on health burden, etc., etc. So how are sustainable businesses different from businesses that may not be what we call as not so sustainable? Let's say unsustainable businesses focus on extracting value from their environment, from society, etc. So profit is a nil-sum game, meaning the focus is, okay, I take something, I get something. It's sort of like a one-way street, and profit is a nil-sum game. However, sustainable business models focus on adding value to their stakeholders. Now, stakeholders could be not just the outside environment or the community. Stakeholders could also be your employees. Stakeholder also could be the space in which you operate, the physical infrastructure that you operate, the environment around you, the society in which you live. So when you start consciously building your business around adding value to your stakeholders, the profit that you generate also adds value. And we'll talk about how, and how specifically you can see examples of how this is different. And therefore, it enables organizations to last longer by definition of the term sustainability, right? You sustain yourself for a longer period of time. Now, we have often talked about that organizations' business needs to be sustainable, and what is the cost of being unsustainable, etc., etc. But I feel, just like we talked about, if it doesn't add value to the stakeholder itself, to the organization itself, then just talking about ESG is not enough. And I think as students of policy and those who are sort of interested in sort of taking this forward and making a real impact or change, I think this is a very important slide. And I like to sort of talk about it a little. Just like you're all into this fellowship because each one wants to gain something out of it, right? If you were not gaining something specific, and if 20 of us over the course of 15 weeks just blah 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 do something and go away, you might say, oh my god, I did not enjoy this fellowship at all, it was a waste of my time, right? Everyone wants to do something with an objective of receiving something in return. So when you look at a small business, which is like, I don't know, just not maybe a small business which just generates a profit of say 1 crore every year, or your kirana store on the ground, or it could be a very large organization like ONGC or, Mahindra or something like that. Everyone needs to know how being ESG compliant or being sustainable can actually make them look good. Is it making them more attractive to investment or capital? Is it reducing their risk? Is it increasing their value in terms of their market share, or is it increasing their value in the eyes of their customer? Is it improving their opportunity to go to other markets? Is it making them more attractive and giving them an edge and being a differentiator when it comes to the competition? Is it helping them attract and retain talent? Is it providing them an extra edge in terms of the license to operate? If so, basically any kind of ESG mandate or a yardstick that you are expecting businesses to function, you need to necessarily demonstrate how it can lead to one or more of these results. If you can't show the connection between ESG, my sense is you can't actually improve adoption of ESG. And so being SDG compliant, whether it is a 2030 pipe dream or whether it's a 2050 or if it's a 2025, it will continue to be a pipe dream and you can't actually move the needle. And some of you who are also students of data science or evaluation would sort of understand that, right? You have to show that you're moving the needle. Only then can you make sure that it reaches. I'm going to pause here for just a bit, just to see if any one of you has any questions, because it's an important slide and we'll talk more about this in the next section. If there are no questions, I'll go ahead. Yeah? Okay. So typically common mistakes that we have seen. Yes, Neeraj.
So I wanted to go back a little bit and understand the historical concept of how ESG came about. Was it some sort of a formal global way, or was it voluntary? Just a little bit brief on that.
Sure. I'll talk about it in detail in the coming slides. And please remind me if I still don't answer your question when we talk about that.
Great. Thank you, Meena.
Shravani?
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask regarding like whatever I mentioned already. Neeraj asked already one question. I got that answer. My second question was actually I was working as a political consultant. So while working on field, which I saw. Basically, I have worked in West Bengal. So there is a clear difference between awareness of people and in the government sector as well for about this ESG compliant and all of this. So in the panchayat sector, if you see, people don't know about this like sustainability and all of this, and they are not even connected via the like if we see the next generation technologies and all, even via WhatsApp or something like that, and that connection is somewhere I found as a gap between panchayat level and sort of the higher authorities of government, be it in the state level or in the like in national level for the central governments. So is there any strategy coming up or already proposed by the government or proposed to the government regarding this ESG compliant?
Very good point, Shabani. In fact, not just in the panchayat, even, I'm sorry, that's my dog. Let me try and get him to be quiet. Sorry. Not just in the panchayat, even if you see mainstream sort of corporate business, there is lack of awareness, and not just lack of awareness, lack of this connection that the benefits of actually being ESG compliant, the benefits to business itself is sort of low, wherever whoever is aware, because this knowledge is not clearly available, the incentivization that we call incentivization to be sustainable is not there. So even if people know about it, the ability to act is sort of, limited. And we'll talk about what are small ways in which all of us can do. Maybe some of you will have better ideas even, and I will also share with you what we are doing on ground to sort of change this mindset. Since Neeraj did ask, let me take this a minute and then we'll talk about it in the coming slides anyway. Just so you know, typically the conversations around ESG started around 50s, 60s, and when initially the conversation was around MDGs, the Millennium Sustainability Goals, in the lead up to 2000s, UNEP had, and the COP conferences that started to happen in the 1990s. And, as 2000 Y2K happened, there were a lot of conversations around the need for a Millennium Development Goal. But because of the way they were designed, I didn't think it was part of the scope of what I was going to do. Maybe I can share some links, etc., with the IMPRI team, which they can sort of share it with you post this call, and I can do that even just after my session. The MDG kind of failed miserably around the world. Okay, so sometime around 2004, I think, is the time when the UN coined the term ESG in their sort of annual report. And the idea was that it will give basic principles of responsibility, of responsible. Primary aim was to look at businesses. ESG was not sort of specifically for across board. The across board were the SDGs, the Sustainability Development Goals, the 17 of them that you can see in many UN. So the idea was that if organizations, businesses can actually be the engine, the leader, then the idea was that everybody else would kind of fall. And through this, through the 2010s, in that decade, a lot of evaluation tools came up in terms of how would you look at ESG, how would you measure it, what would you do. Many kind of reporting frameworks like GRI, etc., came about. We'll talk about some of that in the coming slides. And presently, I'll share as to where India is specifically on ESG. And presently, there are any number of frameworks, okay, any number of frameworks and any number of reporting standards that are available. But I think the critical thing from a policy perspective, which all of you should look at, is what is going to enable that behavior change. Because in terms of, say, Shravani, to your question, it is not lack of information. Firstly, it is not lack of, India is a signatory to many such evaluation standards, etc. There's also a question of, global north versus global south as to what is sort of taking precedence. And there's a lot of the politics of sustainability, as I call it, which kind of also takes over. But I think in my mind, and what we have seen on ground, is the real action or the real disruption or change will happen when there is a behavioral change on the ground. And I'm going to be talking about a little bit on how our own experiences around this behavior change happens. So I'm going to go further. And if you have further questions around this, Neeraj, I can see you have still kept your hand up. We can, come back to this, and I promise to answer all your questions. Yeah. So common mistakes that, happen while adopting sustainable practices. Here, I'm primarily talking about businesses, large and small corporates. I'm talking about social enterprises. I'm talking about large NGOs. I'm not necessarily talking about government systems here. Yeah. So common mistakes that happen is failure to measure and monitor progress. So sustainability can be broadly, if you see a majority of sustainability reports of corporates, it would generally be, oh, we've planted 10,000 trees this year, or we've organized 20 blood camps, or we have organized, health checkups for our employees. Okay, leading to what? How did you move the needle? So the failure to measure and monitor progress is a big deterrent to adopting sustainability practices. Okay. The second big issue is actually this focus solely on environmental sustainability at the cost of social and governance. which actually leads to sustainability or ESG practices themselves being unsustainable. Just by planting more trees or reducing water is not going to make you yourself be sustainable. You have to look at all three pillars of sustainability for you to become truly sustainable and actually start contributing to the larger pool. Third one is this failure to integrate sustainability into business strategy. Sustainability can't remain like this outside box and a nice to have where say, okay, once I make my first million, after that I'll worry whether I have safe workspaces or not. I will make sure that I will make my first billion, and then I will figure out whether my governance practices are in line with what is expected or not. I think all of these are common mistakes, and you see this not just among small businesses. You see all of them. You have to just open the papers or the Economic Times to sort of see very large organizations also kind of falling into this trap. So what is it that one can do, and where you see organizations that really adopt or espouse the ESG norms, or want to become sustainable? What makes them different? So in our experience, if you do these three things, you can actually make the first few steps of becoming ESG savvy, and take the first few steps. The first one is to really invest in your ESG understanding, whether it is to improve awareness, whether it is to make sure that you understand how it might impact your business and your industry, and not just very superficial theoretical knowledge of ESG. There is a big paucity of learning. We are trying to change it ourselves. We have been talking to FICCI, to CII, etc. We've also created a couple of training tools to work on looking at ESG trainings specific to industry. We have also tied up with an organization called Amplo Global in the US to try and see how we can help smaller businesses, MSMEs, to try and create their own strategies to make sure that learnings within their organizations is aligned, and they are able to demonstrate how ESG practices or adopting ESG practices can actually improve in their overall profitability, overall attractiveness to talent, overall attractiveness to becoming investor friendly and being future ready and reducing risk. The second strategy, as we sort of see, is to appoint ESG champions. Here, I would say that while I'm talking about it in the context of small and large corporates, but I think it's also true in terms of when you're speaking about panchayats or other ecosystems of communities that we operate. It can't be like, you're just in random conversations about, okay, let's just improve our understanding. If we don't lead a call to action, it will continue to remain just conversations that, as I told you about the history, these conversations have been happening since 1950. Yeah. So we are, nearly 100 years over, and we are still conversing about it. I think it's important for us to make sure that, and that's usually when we work with organizations consulting on ESG, the first thing we do is engage a focal point. Now, this focal point typically could be somebody knowledgeable in ESG, or it could be somebody knowledgeable in their specific domain, but also with an interest in ESG, who can lead that function, because that person needs to somebody needs to take ownership of things like data collection, of reporting, of making sure whatever conversations happen, they are really adopted as well. So for example, just setting up a POSH committee in an organization, whether it is a formal setup or an informal setup, is not enough. You have to also make sure that that POSH committee does what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to create trainings. It's supposed to create a deterrent. It's supposed to make sure that any cases that come up are executed in the manner and spirit in which it is intended, etc. Otherwise, just making sure that you create a POSH committee and create an understanding is not going to make workspaces safe and healthy. The third thing is data collection and reporting systems. While there are enough and more, like I said, number of frameworks, I'm not going to be talking very much about the types of frameworks that exist. And, a simple Google search will tell you every venture fund worth its salt, or every fintech worth its salt actually has an ESG framework. Every government has a ESG framework. There are, I don't know, a zillion standards, measurement standards that exist, GRI being the most common. But I think it's important to create robust systems. What do I mean by that? One has to be practical and pragmatic enough to look at systems that work for you. So, for example, if you go to, say, a panchayat system, or you go to a small MSME saying, boss, you have to like now start to report, collect data and report, and you need to get somebody who's like GRI compliant. बोलेगा मेरे पास पैसे ही नहीं है इसके. I don't have either the bandwidth or I don't have the time for it. So you need to create robust systems for ensuring collection and reporting of relevant data. We at NITI actually now are in the process of building a very simple kind of, how when you get people to come for a simple blood test at home and you call a Healthian or someone or a Thyrocare, and that person takes blood and goes, and you get like a really simple visual report, and even if you don't take it to a doctor, through that diagnostic report, you're able to see broadly whether you're healthy or not, against a set benchmark. So we are aiming to do something like that, and we're going to be offering at a ridiculously cheap or no cost at all in the first year, so that people start getting used to it and therefore create these robust systems. And then depending on who can demonstrate what kind of support, can actually build their own audits and their own sort of progress towards that. So I think, but these three first steps are very, very important, depending whichever ecosystem you're talking about. Coming to the Indian landscape, so SEBI has actually, theoretically, we are actually fully up there, as in we have this business responsibility and sustainability reporting matrix. If you just go on to the SEBI website or a BSE website, you can actually get access to that entire questionnaire. I mean, you name it, it's there. The FAQ is wonderfully written. It's lovely. There is a compliance currently mandatory in India for the top 1,000 listed companies to report out on their BRSR and create the sustainability report, which I think is wonderful. But the problem is 96% of our units, manufacturing units in India, are actually MSMEs. And for them, it's not mandatory. It's mandatory only for the top 1,000 listed companies. So where is the gap? So we looked at that, and we so this is broadly the structure of the BRSR. It's got three broad components. The first one are sort of general disclosures, like whether you are in an environmentally sensitive zone, does your business use a lot of water, you have, what kind of products you make, etc., etc. The second part of the BRSR looks at management and process. What kind of supply chains do you have? Do you have any leadership issues? You have governance? What is your systems? What is your stakeholder engagement with your communities, with your employees, blah, blah, blah. The third one is a principle and core element, in terms of what you sort of look at, various elements in terms of business conduct and actions and outcomes, etc., etc. So that's all. It's actually in terms of a system, the NGRBC is basically national guidelines have been set by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on responsible business conduct, which they have sort of laid out, and how well do you adhere to that. So the process is very good. The questionnaire is wonderful. The issue, I think, is in the implementation, like it always is. So before we sort of go there, so what we have done, like I said, is we are hoping to roll it out. I'm hoping that with many of you, we've been talking about it with a lot of young people like yourself, on, how we can collectively sort of socialize this more, where adoption is not a hindrance. Lack of knowledge or lack of resources is not a hindrance. And people are able to see that, okay, if I do this, this will be the result. That this theory of change is very apparent and obvious to whoever is using it. And I think that is critical if you are wanting a behavioral shift to sort of adopting ESG. Now, lastly, I'd like to sort of talk about how one can design change. Now, when you look at sustainability design of a system, like I said, diagnosis is definitely the first step. Whether you do it through a simple tool or you go through a very detailed audit, I think depending on which stage of maturity an organization is or an ecosystem is, you start with that. But, typically the understanding is that, sustainability models are very, very difficult and very, very complex. The answer is yes and no, but I think it's important to even pick and choose one particular idea and 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 then do a tracking and progress and documenting irrespective of what you do. You have to pick up and start a process which is important for you. For example, all the lines in red are examples of how a particular sort of design element in sustainability sort of has sort of evolved. For example, in for longevity, for example, when Coca-Cola decided that water is a critical raw material for them, and being not very ESG compliant actually led them to close a few bottling plants and sources. They were forced to pivot. They're also changing customer preferences. They were forced to pivot, which you see Coca-Cola now from being like almost a 99% aerated drink company to becoming like a 40% aerated drink company, where they're spending on an annual basis more and more health-based sort of drinks, which is sort of forcing. So this is like a design pivot into sustainability. Modular building constructions follow a disassembly design principle, where more and more the way, for example, if any one of you is from any city where you have seen metro construction, it's not like to prevent pollution, pre-done modular constructions are sort of being used. So unless, like I said, the first slide where I showed, unless you see this integration of sustainability principles within the business model itself, you'll continue to find this disconnect between talking and between adoption. And when you're looking at doing policy change, when you're doing at really creating sort of system level change, I think one needs to look at some of these factors where I think the recognition of the fact that only when you understand the business benefit to me, people started looking at seriously taking up public transport in Delhi only when AQI became really, really bad, right? It's only when it started to impact their own health where we started sort of to start wearing masks or do things. Even now, I would say that behavior change hasn't happened to fully extent, but then at least it started there. So I feel like it's human behavior that if I don't see value to me in the short term, it's very difficult to expect a large scale system level behavior change. So one last point that I want to close this with, for example, we are working on a very large complex project with fintechs to make them more gender intentional, because we felt like all this conversation around financial inclusion somewhere was not really translating on ground. So within 3 years, we have taken a target to enable 25 million women pan-India.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. To adopt financial products like loan products or
मैम
credit,
पहले का किया हुआ है
to adopt financial products. And how can we do that? We thought that the critical thing was to look at making product innovations that are more gender intentional. And if you just tell the fintech saying, oh, you need to make sort of gender intentional products, they might say, why? Like, is it going to help my bottom line this year? Sure, I will do it, but I will do it. And the pace of change will always be slow. But if you can demonstrate business value saying that if within whatever this year, this is the increase in business, or this is the expansion of market scope, or this is how you could actually become more attractive as an investment destination, then that's the model we have used to work now with 12 to 15 fintechs. The aim is that we will be able to demonstrate an impact change at that scale, and if we do that, you will be able to show. And I think I hope we are still in touch with each other after 2 years, and we would probably have data to show as to how incremental change can actually lead to system level change. And I think that's the model I feel would be the most effective when it comes to adoption of sustainability, both within businesses as well as other ecosystems. Thank you. And I would now like to open the floor for any questions. We have, I think, a few minutes. And
participants can either type in their questions in the Q&A box, or they can just raise their hand.
yes, Darshan.
Good evening, ma'am. It was a very wonderful session. Actually, you mentioned that there is a gap in monitoring sort of whatever we are, preaching about sustainability and all those stuffs. So how are we, uh, targeting to bridge that gap? How are we trying to, focus more on monitoring part? Because I see that even though industries, they do commit a lot, yet the work on the ground level is not that much done. So there is a big gap in
Example of,
between.
yeah, I gave an example of how we are doing it. In fact, I gave you two examples. One is we are creating a very simple self-reporting kind of audit, which very small businesses who don't have very complex audit systems can actually use. We are hoping to go live with it, which is based on the SEBI BRSR model itself. We are hoping to go live with it before the end of the year. The second way we are doing it is in terms of looking at an ecosystem of a particular sector, like in this case, the fintech example that I gave, where we are trying to create, where we have created actually already a common evaluation design, where we are working with them to sort of build their capacity and sort of report out. For that, we will know the result. If we do this, we will obviously document it and we will encourage. So our experience and our advice is to look at this kind of incremental change, focus either at a systemic level, remove the barrier to data collection and reporting, rather than just talking about, oh, you must adopt this. Get people to sort of look at behavioral change to sort of self-report and show the direct correlation between being sustainable and being either more attractive for business and growth. Only then will this behavior change happen.
Thank you for that answer, ma'am. There's another question that has come up. It goes such as follows: that why is sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The question is, why is ESG often termed as greenwash by activists?
Lack of data. Because if you're just going to, like the example that I gave, where you're just going to sort of say, oh, I planted 1,000 trees, or, whether that 1,000 number is good, bad, or ugly, how do we know? And in what context? And is it a one-time thing, or you have just planted? What about those trees? Have they gone up? So if people will continue to sort of say greenwashing in the absence of data and in the absence of self-reporting, once it starts happening, I think we will see system change. I also, on the other hand, want to caution against being too critical. Every change happens with one step. So if someone has made a step, even if it is super small, you can't keep criticizing, which is also what happens today. Saying, oh, ye kaun si badi baat hai? You are just doing this. But every small step leads to a big action. So I think we need a little bit of both data reporting as well as to be supportive and be kind to each other and not be too critical. Yes, Neeraj.
Yeah, hi Meena. Just following up from that last greenwashing, question. So I recently attended a online webinar on an assessment of the BRSR by CSE, this big publication out of New Delhi Center for the Environment, and they had a bunch of consultants, and they essentially reviewed the first set of because the first BSSR self-reporting was voluntary, right? And the second one is being now made mandatory. So there was an assessment.
Only for the top 1,000 companies. It's still
yes, only for the top 1,000 was voluntary. I think the first one, right? So they had done a thorough assessment of it. And one specific thing that I noticed there, and they obviously highlighted that, and my question is specific to that, just your opinion. So, the self-reporting asks corporations, the top 1,000 companies, to report on various questions, right? I think there was this one question related to some specific non-compliance of a particular subject. Now I can't remember what it was. And there was a pharmaceutical company, who had reported that no major non-compliance. So what CSE had responded to that to say that, the fact that non-compliance is being looked at in a self-reporting portal as major or minor in itself is a problem, because any sort of non-compliance is non-compliance. Major and minor is a little bit subjective, right? So I think self-report, what CSE was trying to say in in the mechanism currently that exists, organizations are responding, and there really isn't any validation mechanism in place, right, on what they are reporting on that data, right? So my question to you is, how do you see the ESG space then evolving to bring further validation mechanisms, right, through SEBI, and then penalizing on incorrect data reporting and other things?
Thank you. Just wanted to make a small correction. So for the first 1,000 companies, it's not voluntary, it's mandatory. Like it's supposed to be done like a formal audit. They are also supposed to do it through a third-party verifier, at least for the first 1,000. Having said that, to me, there are three problems at three different layers. The one is the top 1,000 companies account for, just about 10% or less of India's economy. The real transformation or disruption will happen if the rest of the 90, somehow we try and make sure that slowly we start looking to them, for whom it's not mandatory. The issue is that data collection, evaluation, audit also costs money, so just like monitoring and evaluation is sort of seen in the social space as, always an afterthought, saying, acha, chalo, paise honge tab karenge. Let us just focus on the, implementation of the interventions first. I think the same mindsets exist in business as well, saying, okay, let's just focus on making sure that we are profitable first, and then we'll sort of look at it. Which is why we are saying, I think we need to firstly remove these barriers, make it as simplified as possible. And the reason I said that you shouldn't sort of start bashing immediately, saying, why are they not reporting on all 25 things? Why are they only reporting on 10 things? 10 se shuru to karo. Right now, it's zero reporting. So I think it's important for us to encourage organizations, large and small, to take that step, firstly. In terms of policy, I feel SEBI, SIDBI, many of the government organizations, as well as very large think tanks, and maybe even IMPRI, and all of you, once you sort of pass out of this fellowship, perhaps in whichever form you are able to influence, need to focus on the call to action. Again, for example, a very large industry organization, I'm not going to name them, sort of said, oh, okay, now we are going to take upon this mantle upon ourselves to sort of, create this ESG training. I attended one. It was so theoretical. Someone like me who's so interested in the subject got bored and left halfway. If that is going to be my response, do you really think that a CEO or a senior leadership person from a business can, will spend sort of even half a day attending such a thing? So I think it's important that also organizations that, whether they are government or whether they are otherwise, to sort of create very actionable, very simple business-specific modules that people can adopt and do. Second thing. And the last thing I'd like to say is, again, I would like to sort of end by saying, be kind, it's for years and centuries together, you've kind of encouraged, ye sab kuch chalta hai. And suddenly you want people to sort of be very specific, saying, acha, if you don't comply, then you are going to be sort of penalized and whatever else. I feel Sure, penalty needs to be there, definitely. But I think the penalty should be seen as a deterrent. Otherwise, what you end up going to do is to prevent even those who are voluntarily self-reporting right now to stop reporting. So I think it's a chicken and egg thing. There is no right answer for it. But I'd rather focus on what we can enable a behavior change, because I think the transformational result of that is going to be way more important than how truthfully or how accurately one particular organization sort of reports it. So that would be my take on it. I'm always the pragmatist, but I'm always also the optimist, because I always feel like if you take the right steps and keep being, encouraging when somebody has taken the courage to sort of take the first step. I think usually after the 4 steps, they don't need you anymore. But in those first 2-3 steps, it's very critical that you support them so that they don't fall altogether. I don't know if it is a rather philosophical answer to your question, Neeraj, but that's been our philosophy, and that's what we've seen on ground in terms of what is accounted for change.
No, that's helpful, Meena. Thank you. It has to be gradual, and it's a start, and I think that's in itself a great victory. So thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your answers. Yes, Tanisha, would you like to go ahead?
Yes. Ma'am, my
Just a
question
minute,
is,
Preksha, do we have time? I see we are already 5 minutes over. Do we have time, or is someone else waiting?
Time, if you could just take this one question, then we could wrap up.
All right. Yes, Tanisha.
okay. Ma'am, I have seen that environmental and social audits are mostly seen in context of corporate industry, but they are not being very much expected from government organization like National Highway Corporation, etc. Why is it? They also needed to be do
Not
this type of
true.
audit.
Not true. The top 1,000 listed companies includes all. So including PSUs, including sort of government-owned organizations. The top 1,000, it's mandatory for all. It's not only for private corporates. But yes, what I hear you say is that actually everybody needs to adopt, whether it's a small startup, whether it is an MSME, whether it's an NGO. And that's what I'm trying to say. And the way to do that is to make barrier really, really low, both in terms of cost and both in terms of how easy or difficult it is to self-report. Once you make those systems easy, I think then you'll see a big change.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that very enlightening and comprehensive session. Since we don't have any more questions now, we can also move on to the formal vote of thanks. So, as we come to the end of day 3 of EPAYF, Environment Policy and Action Youth Fellowship, an online international summer school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program, I, Preshajlan, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for the day 3 session, Professor Krishna Ji, Dr. Parashram Patil Ji, and Ms. Meena Vaidyanathan Ji, for taking out their valuable time and allowing us to learn from this online certificate program. We thank all of our participants for raising pertinent questions and actively participating in today's deliberations. We look forward to welcoming you next on June 5th for our day 4 of this certification course. And we are also grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube, listening to us on our various podcasts, or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI web policy talk and web policy learning. Wishing you a good day. Thank you so much.